All right, guys. So to begin this lesson, let's just go over what we learned in the last video about arguments, specifically inductive and deductive reasoning. Remember, we said that argument is just a series of statements, one of which claims to be true as the consequence of another. There's two parts to every argument. There's a premise and then a conclusion. Premises often begin with those words like since or because, and conclusions normally begin with words like therefore, consequently, accordingly, right? So be on the lookout for indicating words like those. Remember, the word argument also does not imply or mean any anger or aggression, but an argument can either be inductive or deductive. We said that inductive arguments is any argument where the conclusion is supposed to follow from the premise with probability, right? We said probability is just another word for likelihood. So inductive arguments, any argument where the conclusion is supposed to follow from the premise with probability or likelihood. And then deductive is slightly different from inductive in that it is a type of argument where the conclusion is supposed to follow from the premises with absolute necessity. Another way of putting that, the conclusion, the end statement, is inescapable, right? We also said that there are 6 different types of inductive arguments, and then 5 types of deductive arguments. We're shifting gears a little bit today with this lesson to something that I think you'll find extremely interesting, maybe even fun. But remember, we're building off of inductive and deductive reasonings. So if you do need to go back in your notes right now, take a few minutes, pause the video, look back to remember or even rewrite the different types of inductive and deductive arguments. I'd like you to do that. In fact, if me saying all this right now doesn't immediately take your mind to at least one of each type, then I definitely want you to pause, just take a second to recall everything. So today, we're getting into this really perfect topic in a transition to inductive and deductive reasoning. That is logical fallacies. Logical fallacies, simply put, are just errors in reasoning when deductive and inductive logic are being used incorrectly. What's super interesting about these, though, is that oftentimes they're so meticulously crafted that we, as consumers of information, reasoning, and different arguments, may not even realize it. And the reasons we may not be aware of the flaw most likely is just because we don't know what to look for. So that's what we're doing here. We're going to learn the different forms and types of fallacies so that we, again, as conscious consumers of information, are able to detect when things are, simply put, just not logical. So to simplify things, I do think it's important to kind of separate all of these different types of fallacies into families. First family is family of relevance. We have weak induction, ambiguity, and presumption. Okay, so for starters here today, I'm just going to show you one of each of the 4 families with examples. And then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you some additional steps, a little homework to do to bring to class tomorrow. So first, relevance. There are 6 we're going to learn total under the relevance family. And to begin, I just want you to think about this word, relevance, remembering the definition of an argument, what an argument consists of, and the traits of inductive and deductive reasoning. So why do you think the fallacies under this family of relevance, what do you think they have in common? All right. Right now, I do want you to pause the video, take a second, and ask yourself what you think all of the different types of fallacies under this family have in common. Okay, so hopefully you paused, follow directions. And the reason, the thing that all of these types of fallacies have in common is because in none of them do the premises in any of these statements include a truth in the conclusion, meaning the premise has absolutely nothing to do with the conclusion that follows it. The first of these relevant fallacies that I'm going to give you is called a red herring. These are interesting and often actually pretty successful when we see them in the news. And this picture might help simplify things. So if you see right here, anyone following an argument, this is the main issue, right? So this is what we as conscious consumers want to keep our mindful for, This red herring, hence the name, is an absolutely irrelevant distraction. Irrelevant, but often succeeds. So in these fallacies, if you couldn't guess already, there's a purposeful attempt to disprove another person's argument by changing the subject to something that you present to be the actual issue. So the speaker deliberately introduces a completely irrelevant topic into discussion or debate in order to divert attention away from the topic. Okay, so for example, we see here, the level of mercury in seafood might be unsafe, but what'll the fishermen do to support their families? Okay, so this second statement, the second half of the argument has absolutely nothing to do with the premise. So the sole purpose of bringing the fishermen into this statement at all is solely to distract. Okay, so red herring under relevance. Take a few seconds if you need to, jot down some notes, whatever you need to do to remember, and then we'll move on. So next is weak induction. Hopefully, this will trigger for you this word, induction. Again, what do you know about this? We know that inductive arguments are ones where the conclusion is supposed to follow from the premises with probability. So if these fallacies are of weak induction, then there must just be something weak about it, right? There's something weak, not right about the argument. The first type of weak induction that I'm going to show you today is called false cause. Or if you'd like to use the Latin word, it may even help you remember, post hoc ergo propter hoc. It literally means doesn't follow. In the fallacy of false cause, the speaker is confusing, purposefully again, chronology with causation. They're claiming that since or if A occurred before B, then B must have caused A. Okay, so for example, if I said, I drank bottled water and then got sick, therefore the water bottle must have made me sick. Okay, the second part of this doesn't make sense. It does not follow A. There is no probable reason to believe that because you drank the water bottle and then you got sick, the water bottle made you sick. Okay, so that's false cause, post hoc ergo propter hoc. If nothing else, it's fun to say. Third family, ambiguity. So these are particularly interesting because the key characteristic of any of these fallacies of ambiguity is that there's a variety of meanings, like a range of possibilities, all due to the ambiguity involved. I know. I'm not supposed to use the word ambiguity in the definition of ambiguity. Maybe an example will help. Okay, so